conflict's trajectory depends on unpredictable factors, including leadership changes, technological breakthroughs,
and regional crises. A single incident could trigger escalation beyond either side's intentions or control. Conversely, unexpected opportunities for diplomacy might emerge.
from changing circumstances or new leadership. The future remains unwritten, despite decades of entrenched hostility. The conflict influences global energy markets through perceptions of risk.
Rather than just actual supply disruptions.
Traders price in potential threats to oil infrastructure, shipping lanes, and production facilities.
Speculation can drive prices higher, even when physical flows remain uninterrupted.
This psychological dimension of energy security
amplifies the economic impact of geopolitical tensions. We must understand that the volatility stems from the perception of risk itself. The long-term trajectory, however, remains unchanged.
We thought we understood the scope, but the archive tells a different story. A story of power hidden in plain sight.
American public opinion fluctuates between support for diplomatic engagement and demands for maximum pressure.
Political polarization affects foreign policy consistency as different administrations pursue contradictory strategies.
You think this solves anything? Go home, we don't want you here!
Allies in the region worry about American reliability when policies shift dramatically between presidents.
This unpredictability complicates long-term strategic planning for all parties involved.
Iranian society experiences the conflict through economic hardship, social restrictions, and limited international engagement.
Social restrictions and limited international engagement. Young Iranians face high unemployment and inflation while observing global culture through digital channels. Observing global culture through digital channels. This creates tension between traditional values and aspirations for greater personal and economic freedom.
Aspirations for greater personal and economic freedom.
Government policies must balance ideological commitments with practical needs of the population.
With practical needs of the population.
The future of the Republic, he knew, would be defined not by the lines on this map, but by the will of the people in the streets below. The nuclear negotiations involve intricate technical details about enrichment levels, stockpile sizes, and inspection protocols. Enrichment levels at Natanz and Fordow are nearing critical thresholds. The latest figures show the stockpile size has reached 1,100 kilograms. Diplomats debate the number and type of centrifuges Iran should be allowed to operate.
The centrifuge count has increased by 20% in the last 48 hours. Enrichment levels are approaching critical.
Breakout time. The period needed to produce enough fissile material for a weapon remains a key metric. These technical discussions have profound implications for regional security and non-proliferation regimes. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operates as a parallel military structure, joint with significant political influence. The IRGC controls Iran's missile program, cyber operations, and support for regional proxies. Its Quds force specializes in extraterritorial operations and alliance building across the Middle East. This organization represents a unique fusion of military, economic, and political power. American sanctions target Iran's financial system. Through secondary sanctions on international banks.
Companies doing business with Iran risk losing access to the American financial system and dollar transactions. This extraterritorial application of American law creates global compliance challenges. Even countries opposed to American policy
often enforce these sanctions to protect their economic interests. Cut off from the formal banking system, Tehran relies on this digital hawala. Iran has developed alternative financial mechanisms to circumvent sanctions and maintain trade relationships.
The country uses barter systems, cryptocurrency, and informal money transfer networks known as hawala.
Regional partners facilitate transactions through complex arrangements that obscure the ultimate beneficiaries. These adaptations demonstrate economic resilience, but cannot fully replace integration into global markets. While Tehran developed sophisticated mechanisms, the cost of maintaining this shadow financial system is becoming unsustainable.
Proxy warfare allows Iran to project power while maintaining plausible deniability about direct involvement.
Iran's strategy relies heavily on its proxy network. Groups like Hezbollah, shown here, and
while reducing the risk of direct confrontation with superior American forces.
the United States designates these groups as terrorist organizations and targets their leadership. The doctrine is clear. Maintain stability through overwhelming force. The consequences of failure are unacceptable.
American military doctrine in the region emphasizes air superiority, precision strikes, and rapid deployment capabilities.
The Central Command coordinates on across multiple countries with complex rules of engagement.
Force protection and minimizing civilian casualties shape operational planning and target selection.
Lethality must be applied with precision.
Once confirmed, the consequences are absolute.
However, the presence of American forces remains a source of tension with local populations and governments.
Remains a source of tension with local populations and governments.
Vigilance is perpetual. As one analysis concludes, the next begins. The consequence of inaction outweighs the cost of engagement.
Understanding this conflict requires recognizing its complexity and historical depth.
Simple narratives of good versus evil fail to capture the reality.
Both nations have legitimate security concerns. And strategic interests. Constructive solutions require acknowledging these multiple perspectives.
When we look closely at the data, we see not just lines on a map, but the lives caught in the balance.
Cyber warfare has become a central battleground in the Iran-US conflict, with both sides conducting sophisticated operations. American and Israeli intelligence allegedly deployed the Stuxnet virus to damage Iranian centrifuges in the early 2010s.
Iran has responded with cyber attacks.
Against American banks, government agencies, and critical infrastructure.
These digital confrontations occur in shadows, with attribution remaining difficult.
And responses calibrated to avoid escalation.
Priority alert. We have a confirmed breach on the eastern grid, Sector Gamma. I repeat, Sector Gamma.
American intelligence agencies employ satellite surveillance and signals intelligence to track Iranian activities.
We need to verify these coordinates immediately. The red markers are expanding too fast.
I'm cross-referencing with MI6 data now.
The CIA and NSA coordinate efforts to monitor nuclear facilities and military movements.
Human intelligence sources provide ground-level information, but carry significant risks.
This intelligence gathering shapes policy decisions at the highest levels of government.
Iran's nuclear program involves sophisticated uranium enrichment facilities hidden in mountainous terrain.
The Natanz facility uses thousands of centrifuges to increase uranium isotope concentration.
Inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency monitor these sites, but face access limitations.
The technical complexity of enrichment makes verification challenging for international observers. This documentary has presented facts and analysis for educational purposes. The Iran-United States conflict affects millions of lives across the globe.
Millions of lives across the globe.
Informed citizens are essential for democratic decision-making on foreign policy.
We hope this film contributes to greater understanding of this critical issue.
Issue. America spends billions on military presence and operations in the region. Iran loses tens of billions annually due to sanctions and reduced oil exports. Resources devoted to confrontation could address pressing human needs.
The final cost is measured not just in dollars, but in the lost potential for an entire region. A silent reminder of what could have been.
Environmental issues transcend political boundaries in the region.
Water scarcity, pollution, and climate change affect both Iran and its neighbors.
From the air we breathe to the water we drink, the environmental crisis transcends political divides. These cracked lands are a stark reminder of a changing climate. The rising dust, a symbol of the environment.
Cooperation on environmental challenges could provide a path for dialogue.
However, political tensions often prevent such collaboration.
Diplomatic channels, though limited, continue to exist.
Indirect negotiations through intermediaries have occurred periodically. Oman, Switzerland, and other neutral countries have facilitated communications.
These back channels provide options for crisis management and de-escalation. When overt dialogue breaks down, neutral hubs like Geneva become vital. A silent exchange of...
While the world watches the overtures, true progress occurs here, along the clandestine back channels of global diplomacy. These trajectory lines represent the silent, often invisible pathways of diplomacy. The conflict has implications for nuclear non-proliferation globally.
Nuclear non-proliferation.
How the international community handles Iran's program sets precedents for other nations. Global stability hinges on the nuclear ambitions of Tehran. The international community is unified in its concern. Success or failure in resolving this issue affects the global nuclear order.
Stakes extend far beyond the Middle East region. The path forward remains uncertain and challenging.
Fundamental issues of trust, security,
point and regional order must be addressed.
Both nations face domestic constraints on their foreign policy options.
International cooperation will be essential for any sustainable resolution.
concept of a fog of war, or the uncertainty of conflict, has existed for centuries.
The media plays a crucial role in shaping perceptions of the conflict.
Coverage varies significantly, depending on the source and perspective.
Misinformation and propaganda
can inflame tensions and distort understanding. For citizens in both countries. Economic interdependence exists despite political hostility.
Some trade continues through indirect channels and third countries.
To circumvent direct sanctions, the trade traverses the Atlantic, utilizing third-party nations like Turkey as critical intermediaries. American agricultural products sometimes reach Iranian markets through intermediaries. As the data stream terminates in Tehran, we see the intricate path of indirect trade, in this case, a critical shipment of wheat facilitated by Turkey. These connections demonstrate the complexity of modern international relations. Despite political hostilities, the data reveals a complex web of commerce linking the United States and Iran through unexpected channels. The younger generation in both countries has different perspectives than their elders. Many Iranians seek normal relations with the West and economic opportunities.
Generational shifts within both nations are creating the potential for future policy changes.
Young Americans often question the wisdom of prolonged confrontation. These generational shifts may influence future policy directions. Every system has its patterns.
Our primary function is to identify these patterns across multiple domains.
Where priorities intersect, decisions are required. But when multiple decision makers operate in the same space, the patterns become layered. And it is within these layers that true strategic risk is found.
The global network is fully operational. We are now analyzing every trajectory in real time. The Strait of Hormuz represents a critical flashpoint in this conflict.
This narrow waterway handles a significant portion of global oil shipments.
The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most critical oil choke point. Each day, roughly
Iran has threatened to close the strait in response to extreme pressure.
Such an action would have severe consequences for the global economy.
The threat to the Strait of Hormuz cannot be contained. The economic shockwaves would radiate globally, on equivalent durations. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, the focus of tension shifted
to Iran's nuclear program. Iran insists its nuclear activities
were purely for civilian energy purposes. However, the United States
and other Western nations suspected Iran was developing nuclear weapons capability.
This disagreement became a central issue.
Point in bilateral relations.
This classified assessment detailed the true scope of the Iranian nuclear program, highlighting the growing military threat in the region. The United States maintains a significant military presence in the Persian Gulf region.
American bases in countries like Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait serve as strategic positions.
Iran has developed asymmetric military capabilities to counter this presence.
These include missile programs and naval tactics designed to challenge American dominance. Tensions escalated quickly following the revolution.
Death to America! Death to America! Death to America!
The U.S. Embassy in Tehran was seized by revolutionary students.
It was the 4th of November, 1979. The embassy gates had fallen.
And 52 American diplomats were held hostage for 444 days.
Move! Get him up! You are coming with us!
You have no right.
Tie his hands tightly.
The blindfold symbolized the new reality. It was November 4th, 1979, and the world watched as the crisis began.
This crisis severed diplomatic relations between the two countries, a status that largely remains today.
Iran responded by gradually exceeding the nuclear deal's restrictions on uranium enrichment.
This is a critical moment in the escalating geopolitical crisis. The regime remains resolute, and inside facilities like this,
the country argued it had the right to develop its nuclear program for peaceful purposes.
Tensions increased as Iran moved closer to producing weapons-grade uranium.
The clock is ticking. Despite crippling sanctions, Tehran has accelerated its uranium enrichment program.
The international community struggled to find a diplomatic solution. The international community's struggle to contain Iran's nuclear program has reached a critical juncture.
In the invisible architecture of the modern world, every movement leaves a trace.
Data points, once abstract, are now mapped to a physical form.
A digital breadcrumb trail, marking a journey through simulated space. This is trajectory analysis, a method of predicting future behavior based on past patterns. He is the model, unaware that his every step feeds the simulation. In the silent heart of Silicon Valley, a new form of oversight is taking shape. It operates unseen.
Every day, thousands of autonomous flight paths are plotted across our urban landscapes.
Each line represents a mission, a delivery, a stream of data.
But the system's complexity is also its greatest vulnerability. In the quiet corridors of power, decisions are forged in data and shadow.
But as we descend, the terrain itself reveals its strategic importance.
The initial intelligence provides a satellite overview, a deceptively simple view of a complex theater.
Urban centers become three-dimensional battlefields, each structure a potential stronghold or a liability. And through this, we trace the calculated trajectory of a singular, high-value asset. The modern battle space is no longer defined by borders, but by data.
From the raw chaos of satellite imagery, patterns must be extracted.
The first step is simplification, translating the physical world into a tactical overlay.
Here, every movement is tracked, every vector analyzed for intent. This is where raw intelligence is forged into actionable certainty.
The trajectory analysis is complete. We have confirmation of the critical intersection point. The asset is now live and being tracked.
Look at the southeast sector. The trajectory just shifted red.
Zooming in now. Coordinates locked.
In the digital age, the modern battlefield is a network of interconnected data points. Here, intelligence is not just gathered, it is synthesized from whispers of information across the globe.
Every signal, every transaction is a potential breadcrumb in a trail that spans continents.
The mission is to find the pattern within the noise, to connect disparate events into a coherent threat assessment.
And in this silent war, the first shot is always a line of code.
Confirmed threat vector established. Mobilize Sierra units to grid coordinates immediately.
We have confirmation. The target is compromised.
In the silent calculus of global strategy, geography is the first constant.
Every topographical feature, every urban cluster, becomes a variable in an equation of influence. From satellite-level overviews, we descend into the granular reality of the city grid.
Here, potential vectors of movement are analyzed, modeled, and assessed for risk.
The objective is not to predict the future,
but to understand its countless possibilities. The simulation initiates with a topographical overview of the projected route.
Our primary focus is the trajectory analysis, which plots the optimal path through varied densities of urban structures.
Tracking the movement of the forward elements. The blue line indicates the optimal path through the contested sector.
This investigative documentary style allows for a clear, dispassionate examination of the convoy's movement. The transition from a satellite overview to a 2.5D perspective provides crucial context for both elevation changes Ultimately, the trajectory analysis line is the central narrative element, guiding both the subject and the viewer's eye. In the calculus of modern conflict, the most critical moments are often the most silent. Here, in the sterile quiet of the command center, a strategic pause holds the world in a state of suspended animation. Every stationary marker represents a network of possibilities, a cascade of potential consequences.
The analyst's task is not to act, but to see, to discern the pattern hidden within the stillness.
For in this uncertainty, the first move is everything, and the cost of a miscalculation is absolute. The initial data provides a standard satellite overview of the target area.
Deconstructing the visual noise, we isolate the core topography.
The precision of the map is critical. We must consider every data layer and contour line before initiating the sequence.
Urban structures are then rendered as simple data points, revealing the density of the environment. To understand the trajectory, we first analyze the environment. Here we see the simulated urban. At 1400 hours, the subject's movement was logged, initiating a clear trajectory. Following this path reveals the critical point of intersection. The data confirms the subject's path. We now have a definitive endpoint.
Initial satellite reconnaissance provides a real-time overview of the operational area.
Enhance the target resolution, confirming the trajectory now. But to understand the ground truth, we must peel back the layers, revealing the complex urban terrain below.
Every structure is mapped, every building extruded into a three-dimensional wireframe, leaving no place to hide.
Cross-referencing multiple intelligence sources allows us to calculate the final trajectory analysis, pinpointing the exact location.
Here, at this precise intersection of data and strategy, the decision is made. Beneath the surface, a vast network of capital and influence flows out of the Middle East, connecting the world's major financial hubs.
In an increasingly interconnected world, regional events rarely remain isolated.
From the geopolitical heart of the Middle East, ripples of influence extend across the globe.
The connections are complex, tracing wealth from Riyadh and Doha directly into financial centers like Brussels, often through shell corporations. These connections, forged through economic ties and strategic interests, form a complex and often invisible network. A vast, complex network connects the Middle East to global powers. This high-speed data stream terminates what began as regional influence now stretches across continents. These are the digital arteries of a new global power structure. Understanding these pathways is critical to grasping the full scope of international power dynamics. Every action here sends a signal, and every signal has a destination.
The modern battlefield is no longer defined by borders, but by reach. From thousands of miles away, unmanned systems can project power with unprecedented precision.
Drone technology has fundamentally shifted the strategic landscape, allowing for unprecedented global reach and precision targeting.
This technological leap has fundamentally altered the calculus of conflict.
The paradigm has shifted. Modern warfare is no longer defined by borders, but by...
Every engagement is now a data-driven event, where information supremacy is as critical as firepower.
The animation explores escalation patterns using expanding rings.
And trajectory overlay.
To represent rising tensions in key zones.
As the city model renders in high definition, we can isolate the Crimson Ring activity. This suggests localized tension despite the standing ceasefire.
This investigative style blends abstract data.
The synthesis of the data reveals the full strategic picture. The pulsating rings indicate a 72% expansion.
The fundamental nature of conflict has not changed, but its geography has been irrevocably altered.
For generations, battles were defined by terrain, by hills to be taken, and valleys to be held.
Today, the battlefield is vertical, dense, and civilian. And victory is no longer measured in territory, but in precise, data-driven targeting. From the trenches of the past to the pixels of the present, the nature of conflict is shifting. In this new arena, there is no front line, only a target list.
The battle space is no longer defined by terrain, but by data. These are not flight paths, but targeting coordinates.
The introduction of advanced aerial surveillance platforms does not occur in a vacuum.
It triggers a cascade of strategic realignments among neighboring powers. Each nation's response is a calculated adjustment, a shift in posture visible only through careful analysis. Military assets are repositioned, defensive systems are recalibrated, and new alliances are quietly forged. This is the invisible battlefield.
The new sensor sweep confirms the data acquisition. This expanded coverage forced a visible alteration in the geopolitical landscape across the region.
Where lines of influence are redrawn not by armies, but by the silent reach of surveillance.
The deployment of this surveillance grid has fundamentally altered the strategic calculus. The ripple effect is undeniable.
This is the architecture of the 21st century economy. A sprawling, digitized network where
the arteries of a nation are not its rivers, but its infrastructure.
And every pulse of activity, from the flow of commerce to the daily commute, leaves a digital trace.
This data, once invisible, is now the bedrock of modern stability analysis. By monitoring these economic hubs, we can predict patterns, anticipate disruptions.
What appears as a single flow of capital is merely one thread in a vast, interconnected system that
and subtly influence the delicate balance of urban development.
Every transaction, every movement of assets is tracked and analyzed in real time, feeding the central node. Over the last half-century, the geopolitical tectonic plates have shifted, slow but inexorably.
what were once firm, defined borders have become porous, contested zones of influence.
The old borders are fading. We are entering an era defined not by rigid lines.
Economic corridors, once imagined, are now etched onto the landscape, tracing new pathways of power.
These amber trajectories highlight the shifting centers of economic gravity. As the network expands, we see the emergence of new geopolitical corridors.
Urban centers have swelled, becoming anchors in this new strategic reality.
This visualization confirms the new geopolitical reality, a complex tapestry of influence, where
understanding these long-term vectors is not just an academic exercise. It is the key to anticipating the future. As the data settles, the true shape of the new strategic landscape begins to emerge from the void. In the quiet corridors of power, a single decision can ripple across continents.
Here, at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a new trade directive was signed into law.
The effect was not immediate, but its trajectory was precise.
And aimed directly at the heart of a rival's economic zone.
Within hours, the embassy in the target nation was flooded with diplomatic protests, signaling a fundamental shift in the regional balance.
Every operation begins with a canvas. Here, the city itself. As the visualization stabilizes, we confirm the synchronization. All units are moving along the pre-authorized pathways. But the reality on the ground is a complex three-dimensional problem set. Success is not measured in force, but in temporal alignment. Multiple assets, moving in concert, following paths of least resistance.
Precision is paramount. The system recalculates constantly, navigating complex urban terrain with zero deviation from the strategic objective.
A symphony of precision, where every second is accounted for, and no movement is wasted.
The coordinated strategy is fully implemented. The precision of the trajectory web ensures total coverage across the sector. From this vantage point, the world is a complex web of interconnected data. Every shipment, every journey is tracked.
The arteries of our world are in constant motion. Global logistics, the lifeblood of our economy, relies on a complex network of transportation infrastructure.
Every shipment, every vehicle, every link in this chain leaves a digital footprint.
When the signal activates, the trajectory is locked. We monitor billions of data points moving across the globe every second. Through advanced aerial surveillance systems, this constant flow of mobility is meticulously monitored and analyzed. Every shipment, every vehicle, every moment of transit is logged in real time. We see everything that moves across the globe.
This is the unseen architecture of modern control.
Every shipment, every vehicle, every movement across the globe is accounted for. The scale of the system is absolute.
The traditional borders defining our world are becoming obsolete. Unmanned drone technology is fundamentally altering national security.
In the 21st century, the theater of conflict is increasingly defined not by soldiers, but by silicon.
These are the borders of the 20th century. But in the age of the drone, the very concept of national security is being redrawn.
Unmanned aerial systems now traverse sovereign airspace with digital precision, operating beyond the reach of traditional patrols.
The ripple marks the moment of incursion. With this breach, the drone demonstrates an uncontested. These trajectories do more than just cross lines on a map. They actively redraw them, creating new, invisible frontiers.
As these new trajectories demonstrate, the battlefield is no longer defined by physical borders.
Consequently, long-standing perceptions of regional security are being fundamentally challenged and reshaped.
The data stream confirms the speed and altitude. This new era of warfare operates outside the
For nations on the ground, the sky has become a new and unpredictable chessboard. Traditional borders are meaningless when the battlefield exists everywhere at once. The modern battlefield is increasingly urban, a dense, complex environment where every street and structure presents a unique challenge. To understand this battle space, we must first deconstruct it, translating raw satellite data into a purely tactical model.
Structural density becomes the primary data layer. Each building is no longer architecture, but a variable affecting sightlines, cover, and movement.
This new battle space is unlike any we've seen before. The canyons of data run deep.
In this environment, every action must be calculated. A single decision can have cascading consequences across multiple vectors.
Is the essence of modern military decision-making, visualizing not just the path of a projectile, but the path of an outcome.
The convergence of these three distinct paths highlights the complexity of the operation. The fundamental principles of conflict have always been written on the land itself. From the earliest conflicts, terrain dictated strategy. Now, we navigate a new kind of war. From the trenches of the Somme to the jungles of Vietnam, terrain dictated the terms of engagement. From the trenches of terrain-based conflict, we have evolved to the high-resolution grid of modern data-driven operations.
But the digital age introduced a new dimension, transforming the physical battlefield into a grid of data.
Today, the line of sight is no longer measured in meters, but in pixels and bandwidth.
The battlefield is no longer defined by terrain, but by data.
And the decisive strike is delivered not by battalions, but by algorithms from half a world away. The system confirms the strike with absolute precision. What was once a localized engagement is revealed.
The era of terrain-based conflict is receding. Today, the battle space is defined by data, precise and absolute. The modern city is a network of targets and logistics. Our visualization platform renders the invisible terrain visible. modern era, the battlefield is no longer confined to open fields. It has moved.
Every street, every building becomes a critical variable in the complex equation of military strategy. Using satellite data, we can deconstruct the urban landscape, transforming a physical space into a readable topographical map.
By extruding the schematic data, the city reveals its true strategic complexity.
From this two-dimensional plane, we extrude key structures, visualizing the lines of sight and the hidden angles of engagement that define urban warfare.
The urban environment is a complex battle space.
Only by analyzing every potential trajectory can we begin to understand the split-second decisions that determine success or failure. Data streams are converging on this location. It signifies a critical strategic nexus within the battle space. The sheer density of the data highlights the challenge. What appears as chaos is, in fact, intelligence. We are looking at a traditional border. Yet, the advent of drone technology is rapidly redefining these boundaries. For centuries, security was defined by lines on a map, physical borders, clear and understood.
This new reality, visualized here in tactical data, demonstrates how quickly traditional borders are being
But a new dynamic is emerging, operating in a dimension that renders these lines obsolete. The blue line represents a new era of cross-border dynamics, challenging traditional security paradigms. Unmanned aerial systems trace paths driven by data, not geography, crossing sovereign territories with impunity.
as these trajectories intersect with population centers. The very definition of a front line is erased. This is the new reality of regional security, a landscape redrawn not by treaties, but by technology. Borders are obsolete. We must now look to the skies.
The fundamental principles of conflict are timeless, written in the language of terrain, strategy, and attrition. For centuries, victory was determined by control of the high ground, the valleys, the physical world beneath a soldier's feet.
We are witnessing a fundamental shift. Warfare has moved from the physical geography of the past into...
But as the battlefield shifted from open country to the concrete canyon, the nature of observation began to change.
The eye in the sky became persistent, all-seeing, removing the warrior from the world they were tasked to watch.
Warfare is no longer bound by terrain. It has become a data-driven, detached operation, precise and calculating. And with this new vision comes a new form of strike, precise, distant, and executed with the cold logic of a data point.
The battlefield is no longer bound by terrain. It is a digital canvas. This is the new frontier of geopolitics, strategic airspace control, and
In the modern geopolitical landscape, control is not merely defined by borders on the ground. It is projected upwards into the vast, contested arena of strategic airspace.
This is the new reality of modern geopolitics, strategic airspace, an invisible layer where
Here, invisible corridors of influence are meticulously charted and fiercely defended.
these trajectories are the arteries of power, flowing over population centers and critical infrastructure.
These aren't just lines on a map. They are the invisible highways of modern power, constantly shifting, constantly contested. Understanding this invisible architecture is key to understanding the future of global conflict.
This invisible layer, this strategic airspace, is the new frontier of modern geopolitics.
The earliest deployments were tests of endurance, mapping the contours of a new kind of frontier.
Routes were not random. They were meticulously planned algorithms of observation.
Each pass gathered data, refining the patterns of surveillance with cold precision.
Infrastructure, once invisible from above, became nodes in a vast digital network.
This was the blueprint for a borderless watch, drawn in light and shadow. For centuries, the landscapes of the Middle East have been the stage for conflict. The landscape of the Middle East is shifting. Conflict here is no longer defined by the physical, but by the digital frontier. But the nature of that conflict is changing.
Today's battlefields are not just drawn on sand, but in silicon.
From unseen altitudes, power is projected with digital precision.
The battlefield is changing. Conflict is no longer defined by boots on the ground, but by the cold,
And the lines that once defined nations are now redrawn by data.
as the physical terrain fades, the digital front lines emerge, charting the future of modern warfare.